Righto, buddy miners. The most bloody publicised AGM in friggin' probably AGM histories in the mining industry happened today. Live feeds on the bloody news platforms, and obviously you two boys attended the MinRes AGM. Chris Ellison back in the camera, facing the music in a way. I think old James McClements would be a bit worn out after today. He took the whole thing pretty much.
Prime time, wasn't it, Matty?
What was the vibe like in the room? Take us into the room.
Well, before you get in the room, a lot of media, a lot of cameras. You know, like you're going to see some superstar athletes or something when you walk in. I mean, I guess we're part of the media as well, but there's cameras, cameras, and heaps of journos. Unlike any AGM that I've been to, not that I've been to thousands of them, but yeah, I mean, there was a pretty pumped up sort of feeling. You got the impressions, chatting with people beforehand, shareholders and other people sort of interested, investors and the like. They were pretty excited for this one.
It was nuanced, I'd say, Matty. Like there were a lot of visitors, there were a lot of shareholders, and it's a polarizing stock. And there was just like you were either emphatically pro Chris or you didn't clap to any of the parts where people clapped. It was just that's how I would describe it.
Yeah. We'll get into NexGen after MinRes, by the way. Hold on, uranium bulls. But
big news on that one too.
Big news. So anyway, we'll lead out. Ali GC, ding, ding, ding for the GC ETF. Bloody right. Where do we want to take it away? What did you get from the prezzo? And then we'll give our individual takes on the whole thing. It's like independent views within an independent podcast.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I think we should sort of spell it out to people. Obviously, a lot of people working away wouldn't have had time to tune in and just get a feel for it. So it was pretty long. So James McClements came and addressed. He spoke for a while. You had a couple brief presentations from the two new directors that came on earlier this year, one late last year. Ellison gave a segment on the business after addressing the everything that's happened in the last 4 or 5 weeks.
And it was interesting because it was his first verbal display since all this has happened.
Let's play it now.
I think firstly, let me follow on from James, and I'd like to talk about the issues that are spread across the news. Many years ago, I was a partner in a private company and made a judgment error with reporting of personal tax. I later went on to self-report it. Subsequently, I paid the penalties, interest and tax, and that was all due and payable. So I put that behind me, and I deeply regret the impact this has had on the business and our people. I can't stress enough how much I hate what I've done, and I'm a dark cloud in my life that I'll live with forever. But regardless, I want everyone to know I deeply regret that error in judgment that I made back there. I want to assure the shareholders also, as James said, that any personal expenses I've ever had in the business have always been paid for by myself and always repaid promptly. Looking back, I accept things could have been and should have been a lot different, particularly around corporate governance. There's no question of that. We grew rapidly, particularly over the last 5 years. But I've got a great board. They've put those measures in place. I've got a very experienced, diverse board that know exactly what to do. Those measures are in place now. I've made some mistakes along the way. I own those mistakes, and I'm standing here. I take full responsibility for them. That won't change.
There we go. First time we've seen it since him in the flesh since all this has happened.
What do you make of it, Matty?
My take was you could tell there's scripted components, but you can tell when he wasn't reading about how much he hates what he did and the cloud that he'll have for the rest of his life over it. So that I take that as sincere, and you can tell he's fronted up to go on beyond this point for the business and the shareholders. That's my take.
Yeah, Chris clearly, MinRes means the world to him, and it's not the action specifically, but it's what this has done to the brand, to the name, the scrutiny that it's drawn, that has clearly worn at him and done a number on him. And I felt that was pretty heartfelt from him. I think he is not not at all pleased with what's gone on and the attention that's brought to Mins.
Yeah,
You have a different
I'd
take?
offer a different interpretation of the events. We all saw the same thing, but my mum always taught me to say sorry. I'm sorry, not I regret doing it. She said, make sure you say I'm sorry if you are sorry, and that was a notable absence. I also just think does he regret doing it or does he regret getting caught?
Yeah, that ties into dragging the brand through the mud, or actually the actions itself. And yeah, that's I'm sure everyone will have a sort of slightly different interpretation on how that sort of went down. What was noticeable though, after that and after he gave the business update, the round of applause in the room there, you clearly, the majority were with Chris Ellison. They were on his side. They have, as many of them spoke in the Q&A on the comment section, love what he's done for the business and want him to continue on.
Yeah. Well, I'll play a few of them later, but we can go through everything prior to that because there's two sides to it. There's all the questions that were asked about everything that's been in the media, but then there's the other side of there was shareholders and questions that were advocating on the other side for what he's done and what they want him to do in the future. So
yeah, and one thing we've missed here as well is just like James McClemens took control of this meeting. He hasn't taken control of the MinRes AGMs in the past that I'm aware of, but he answered every single question in the Q&A. He gave a massive address at the beginning, and it was basically almost entirely scripted stuff. It seemed like it flowed. It didn't feel like he was reading something, and he was always making eye contact with the audience. But he played a very big role in the meeting today, and Chris was sort of, I think, intentionally positioned to be, the side showy to the extent they could control that as well.
yeah, definitely.
So how do we think, gents, about the board's actions? You're obviously, you're in the room or you're watching it and you can see the whole board in front of you, and obviously a couple of them presented as well. But in some of their comments, they have taken on a bit more than they thought they were taking on when they stepped on this board. It's taken, like they said, a lot of their time in the last 1 to 2 months, a lot of them obviously being on numerous other sorts of boards. So how do they look coming out of this? What do you guys reckon on that sort of point?
What, prior to this or from when the actions got put in place?
From the actions they've taken since all the news surfaced.
Well, as McClemens clearly states, even though the information came to light 2 years ago, that wasn't. I know they kept harping on about the material nature of it, but there was obviously investigations in place that weren't concluded yet, and they can't release information until they've got firm evidence of everything proofed. Is that
strange to you? Like, yeah,
I see where they're coming from.
2.5 years ago, they got information, and they still talk about needing to get the facts. Like, we've all had kind of negative surprises in our life from time to time where you've got to do some digging to figure out what's going on. It doesn't take 2.5 years.
You can't. You got no proof of putting a timeline on that.
They say mid 2022, and then at another point in the meeting, they reference late in 23 is when a bigger chunk of news came to it. I mean, if I'm on the board, I'm interrogating the shit out of what's just been brought to me because your name is it's in your job title.
Here's a third-party tech firm. You must give complete access to every single email that has ever been sent to this company, and then you don't have to manually read them all. But this stuff doesn't take 2.5 years. Like, that's a strange timeline in my opinion.
Yeah,
I can't get past that. So I can't look at, I think they're in damage control. They've done kind of well to control the narrative in this scenario, but I can't get over the fact that information was revealed 2.5 years ago, and it was it came to light not from a disclosure from the company, but came to light from the media.
And that pulls back to one of the questions that was asked, which was essentially saying, would you have come out and said all of this stuff if the media hadn't reported it? And the question was batted off with a pretty straight bat. I didn't get a clear answer on yes or no there. I'm not sure if you guys interpreted that one any differently.
Yeah. The one I wanted more clarity on, which they really batted off, was the Cali Metals one.
Yeah.
And it was, a lot of that was more related to the indirect relationships personally with all the shareholders.
We were talking with a shareholder at the end of the meeting, Matty, and he referenced that one specifically, and he's supportive of Chris, supportive of the company, and he's like, the most damning of everything is the Cali metals, and that's the one I can't wrap my head around.
Yeah.
And they were sort of saying to the effect that they'd stopped staff from selling afterwards.
Yeah, but they weren't the big ticket item ones on the that's probably the one on. That's the one that sticks out to me the most for the whole history, to be honest. And we highlighted that when it happened as well. So that's probably one that's just going to get swept under the rug in the future.
I don't think so. I think ASIC said that they've initiated a preliminary inquiries. I think that's in relation to that. Yeah.
I think you're right, and that might also tie in with how the news that came out on Wildcat. It could be a while, I don't know when, but I'd imagine ASIC was pulling that in with the perspective of looking at MinRes, not Wildcat, but that is a rough guess from the outside. We don't really know what's going on, but yeah, I mean, I think MinRes would be very happy to not have that one brought up again, but we'll sort of see.
Who's it going to affect the Cali metals thing? Because what are they? They've got to obviously try and prove that all these shareholders were given allocation preferentially in this IPO by who?
It's not just that. It's like, did they want to buy the IPO with direct knowledge that MinRes would buy on market the next day and push the share price higher?
Yeah, and that's the thing.
That's front running. Right?
Oh yeah, it is, and that's like how if they prove that.
Yeah.
But that's what the pretty blind Freddie would see that is the allegation here.
Yeah.
So
I mean, we'll see if there was any emails on that front, although emails were deleted in the past on other things. So who knows where that one kind of goes. Before we get into some of the other questions, there was a few other that I'm keen to chat about, but there were a few other comments that Chris made in his segment that I thought were kind of interesting. I'm sure we'll touch on the balance sheet in a moment, but again, he said this time in a year, people will be saying what was the problem or sort of what was the fuss with the balance sheet. Again, that sort of rhetoric, that stood out to me. And one other one, which I thought was a bit funny, talking about how these guys still deliver fixed price contracts on their mining services and their builds, and we're one of the last businesses to do fixed price contracts. Other contractors have gone soft and fluffy, hence costs get blown out and things don't get delivered. I thought that was another one that kind of stood out to me at least. Any other components from what Chris said, or should we jump into the Q&A, guys?
There was one slide in Chris's address which looked very new to me, and when it popped up, I'm like squinting. I can't see too well, but I was squinting to make sense of the slide, and I realised I could put up my phone and do it better. But it was slide 12 in the AGM deck, and it's actually, I think it's a very fucking important slide, to be honest. So it's the Onslow MinRes kind of EBITDA bridge. Last time we saw this chart, it looked like this in the half year results, and I've been kind of banging my head on this chart because I couldn't get the numbers to work with the assumptions sort of provided in the footnotes. There's two big issues I took looking at the old one. The first one is you can't get that number US 1.053 billion in EBITDA to pop out from the assumptions in the footnotes. You can get the Aussie 1.053 billion EBITDA to pop out though. So I'm doing it in the spreadsheet. I'm trying to make it all work, and that was the only way I could do it. And so I thought there's a currency error here. Not that I should be critical. I've made a currency error on MinRes before in the past, but it's a slide deck. And the second issue I had was I put in the director special 2 days ago. The footnote said royalties of 9.5%. You can kind of see I highlighted it there. But we know about royalties adding up to 10.75%, being the Red Hill Iron 0.75%, Taurus 2.5%. They bought that off Anglo earlier this year, and the state government royalty of 7.5%.
Yeah, just quickly for those listening in, what you've just sort of shown is an older bar chart showing 1.053 in EBITDA in US dollar terms in an old deck, and then the deck that comes out today shows that same figure in Aussie dollars.
Yeah, they fixed the title and said Aussie millions, which is what I thought it was. Both of the concerns have been addressed in this new EBITDA bridge. The currency is now AUD, which I thought it should have been. And you can see the footnotes there. It's now expanded to say 9.5% life of mine average royalties. And that's actually an important an important point because because it's 10.75% in the earliest phase of mining. I think the first at least couple of years, the Taurus royalty is applying to the Kens Bore area where they're mining from at the moment. The Taurus royalty doesn't apply to every single tenement, whereas the Red Hill and the state government obviously do apply. But what we care about is the early years, right? That's when you have fragility. So yeah, it's good to get an expansion on that. Good to get the chart fixed. But they've also included for our benefit in this updated chart the EBITDA to MinRes associated with the whole road and the mining services contract too, which is super helpful. So you've got 280 from mining services and 144 million Aussie from the whole road. That's per annum, regardless of the spot price, right? But an analyst, I think, also needs to sense check the other assumptions in the footnotes here too. This is in my opinion, like we talk with the governance, we talk all of that sort of stuff. But when I'm at the AGM and I'm like, what's the new information here? I care so much about the economics of this project. That determines everything. Like is it a buy or is it a sell? It's this slide. This slide is whether it means it's a buy or a sell, in my opinion. This like the price discount for grade and impurities on their product, they put in the footnotes there is 15%. And I question the reasonableness of that because I went to MinRes's own reserve statement on the project, and you can see that the reserve statement assumes a life of mine deduction of 18.6% instead of 15%. Another really important detail that's absent is a detail you'll find inside MinRes's disclosure documents when they did the big debt offering to the US bondholders. It's really hard to get hold of these documents, by the way, but I managed to get hold of the documents that they had to disclose to the US bond investors. And here, I'll bring it up, but we all know that Baowu gets at least 50% and up to 75% of MinRes's share of iron ore out of Onslow. But you might not know that Baosteel is entitled to a discount of 2.5% on that iron ore that it takes for its own use. So it's kind of like another punitive kind of royalty on top of the price received for MinRes on its product in some ways when you think about the lower price because Baowu is entitled to a discount. And then you've got to stress test the other assumptions that are actually provided too, I think. Should you assume a linear realisation percentage as price goes lower, or is that going to kind of get more severe? Should you assume US $9 per wet metric tonne shipping is the right number? What about FX sensitivity? What if costs are a fair bit north of $45 per tonne FOB in the end, like they say they're going to be? Moisture of 8% they assume there, but the reserves they say 8.8%. What if getting 35 million tonnes per annum is constrained in some way? We don't know that yet until they kind of get there. What further deductions could be applicable to the ore if it doesn't meet the impurities thresholds set by Baowu in the offtake, which I found this detail in the reserve statement, looking specifically at the alumina content. It's extremely close to the project reserve. So you can see these thresholds in the Baowu offtake contract. You've got to have alumina less than 3.5%. That's super close to the percentage of alumina in the reserves of the Onslow project. And there's a whole bunch of deposits, and I think there's only like 2 deposits that have lower than that. But on a grade tonnage curve, you can selectively kind of get stuff that meets it. I'm not saying Baowu won't take it. They'll take it, but there'll be more deductions if you don't meet the contractual thresholds, right? So just forget all the governance and all of the media speculative stuff for the moment. If you're savvy about this stock, this is what you got to focus on, in my opinion. The right question to ask is, what is MinRes's all-in cash flow break-even iron ore price at Onslow? That's the most important thing to figure it out, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Who would have thought their success will be on commodity prices for a mining company?
Absolutely. That's what it comes down to. Iron ore and of course, lithium as well. Big one there. So
it's more leveraged to iron ore, do you believe, than a lithium turnaround with what they've got at the moment, if Bald Hill was operating still?
I think they're more leveraged to iron ore, but I think the stock moves more to lithium. Yeah.
Why's that?
Don't know. I think it's just like that
sentiment thing.
Yeah.
And probably a margin thing, because lithium
moves a lot.
when they're losing money on lithium, effectively, talk about talk when you're losing money to something,
big time. Yes. The Q&A it kicked off with you could tell there were these pre-submitted questions by which were read out initially, and then you can see James McClements just kind of get in a rhythm answering those questions, and you could see they were all scripted. They were largely all directed at the governance things, and they they were basically a scripted response to those questions, which gave, I think, James McClements ammo in subsequent questions to say, I've already answered this question, refer back there.
100%. That's what they were trying to do. Group them together and say, we've addressed that. Don't have to speak to it. I mean, to their sort of benefit, they did hear out everyone. You know, we thought maybe they'll just sort of cut it short. That wasn't the case. They heard out everyone, but, you know, it was James McClements answering every single question, and they did bat off heaps of them. Other ones that sort of stood out, this one I'm sure stood out to you guys as well, was a question on Chris Ellison's personal leverage. We got no insight to what the actual answer was at all. James McClements said, you know, it's not his position to talk about Ellison's personal financial dealings, but I thought that was a super interesting question. We've seen it with, you know, mining moguls, if you like, in Australia in the past, where leverage has brought them crashing down. Short sellers have piled on the stock because they see it coming. The lenders take the stock, you know, they don't really want it, all these sorts of things. So that was
But like, you got to, like, he's been fucking doing this for 30 odd years. Like, he was getting a salary as well. Like, it was like that's his stock value they were talking about, and like, has he used that to let margin to leverage other stuff? But it's hard to, you can't dig into his personal finances. Like, considering he's been getting a pretty good fucking salary for the whole time he's been running MinRes, I'm sure a lot of that went to personal sales. You can't, and obviously they didn't.
The dividend would be more, but yeah, then there's like the other related party stuff. But there's also like, does it matter to you as a shareholder if like, let's say there's a certain threshold where you could get margin called? Would you want to know what that threshold is? Is that a question you'd want to know the answer to? I agree. It's probably a bit of, you know, a breach of like what's you're allowed to ask. But of all the questions that got asked, he wanted to answer that one the most. You could see he was like, but James sort of, you know, said, no, I've got this. Like, yeah, but he was killing to answer that question himself, whether it was to show off the questioner for asking the question, or if it was to answer it. You know, I don't know.
And my take on that one is manager, like, there's the select few MDs and CEOs in history that you could nearly put your fucking all your money on that they'd never sell a share, and it's these some of these founder ones that go forever. You'd bet your bottom dollar they don't want to sell a share. That is how they run the business. That's how they just don't sell shares.
He has sold shares. In the IPO, there was a shareholder sell down component of that.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, okay, but not privately. Like, are you talking before it went public?
In the process of becoming a public company, there was an IPO proceeds cash in the company, but also a shareholder sell down of the shareholders at the time.
Yeah, but while it's been public, never sold a share.
I don't know if that's necessarily 100% true, but yeah.
But no notable sell down anyway. So
yeah, the couple other questions that stood out to me was on the energy assets. There was a good few shareholders that were pretty riled up saying you've sold these too cheap. That sort of stood out to me, and the company essentially saying there was no way we could meet any of the CapEx requirements given the position we're in. We had to get rid of them, and you know, bitter pill to swallow, but there was no way around that from the company's perspective. Another sort of group of questions that stood out, also addressed in the statements that they gave, was around the Northern Gateway, this sort of thing around Bullsbrook, this industrial area that made the media on Friday last week. No apology from the company. They believe that is firmly in their, you know, commercial responsibility to look after the future of the business. They said that wasn't a related party transaction, taking it from Goldman. So we didn't see any response to the media earlier this week after the article broke last Friday. So it was good to get a bit more colour after we've learnt a bit more about that specific topic.
Righto, why don't we how about we sum up what we bloody think from here, because this has been going on for fucking bit now, and it's the media's been consumed by it. Like, as you said, it is one of the biggest corporate stories for a long time, if not the generation, and could still well be if whether more comes or not, we don't know. But here's, as you said, there's the critical side, but then there's the other side. You know, we've seen, you know, L1 Capital and Rafi Lamb get behind him in the media as a supporter. Then I'm just going to play a few from the actual AGM questions over that were written in and in person, and just have a listen to the reaction to some of these.
Next online question is from Noel Johnson, Superannuation Fund. Why has the board reduced future mineral resources profits by 1, selling our gas fields too cheaply, and 2, removing a CEO whose results are hard to match, 16% plus return on invested capital over the last 4 years, and who has 11% shareholding and a vested interest in the company's future on ESG grounds?
I'll just keep them rolling.
I'm a private shareholder and a company director who, through various nominees, own 1,258 Min shares. Whatever happened a long time ago before Min IPO'd, I'm not interested in. Chris has realised the error of his ways a long time ago. He made amends to the ATO, the board is aware and followed up, and now there is additional scrutiny and tightening of protocols under the review of the Governance Committee. As a shareholder, I would like Min to get on with its core business. I fully support Chris Ellison and know many other shareholders who do. Many of us don't want him to leave in 18 months. We are confident in the business direction he is taking with Min. He built the company and it needs his continued vision for at least 2 years. The continued historic navel gazing by AFR and others has only diminished shareholder value for things that happened a long time ago, things that have been atoned for. Min's got a bright future, so I would encourage the board to get on with the core business of mining and building shareholder value. I, for one, would support Chris continuing in the role after 18 months on the proviso board set KPIs are achieved. How about it, board? Can the shareholders vote on Chris's ongoing role at the next AGM rather than the board making a unilateral decision? We, the shareholders, own this company. Chris is the one who led its creation. I think he deserves another chance.
Okay, my name's David Bowden. I'm a shareholder since the company listing.
Look at the background, mate. The background there, travel on his phone.
Investment in MRL has yielded none other than impeccable financial performance and remuneration to shareholders continuously since 2007. This should not be forgotten under the stewardship of the board and the managing director. The company has achieved many other significant, important milestones, providing a culture that delivers on time to budget, proactive to globally changing circumstances, a very safe workplace, established carbon reduction programs and sustainability, a leader in female participation and leadership, a leader in cultural heritage. As a shareholder, I am proud of all of these achievements. Of course, none of this can be achieved without strong leadership from the top. It saddens me that the media have conducted their own trial by media and that there is a general desire to bash a tall poppy. This has unnecessarily diminished shareholder value. I had the option to sell out when they're $80. I haven't sold a share. I don't intend to. Some mistakes have been made by the managing director. They have been publicly admitted, acknowledged, and with remorse. Financial errors have been corrected and significant sanction and penalties have been imposed and paid. As a shareholder, I was surprised to learn of the board's decision to accelerate the succession of the managing director. If it's absolutely necessary, and personally I'm not in favour, the timeline must be driven by finding a suitable replacement, not by some arbitrary time limit. In any case, there should be a role for Mr. Ellison's continued service to the company to ensure its ongoing success. As current shareholders, let us celebrate the success of this entity under the guidance of the board and its managing director and every contributing employee to the company. Well done. Thank you.
So there you go. That's obviously a small sample size, but that's where there is that support out there for him to essentially bypass that 12 to 18 month thing. And like, I guess my view of the whole thing, and I know we're all different, because I know, like, from working in the industry, and it was funny when they mentioned the the COVID thing, because I actually I remember going into, and the reason we got to keep working, because MinRes actually set up this big fucking tent out near the airport where everyone had to go get COVID tested to get back on site. So you look at what the company has done for the industry, it is fucking massive, the jobs they do. So from this point, because everything's been fleshed out in the media already, there could be, if there is more to come, and there is more to come, but we don't know yet. But from this point, I think the board, all their decisions have been in good response to it. What's come out there, I don't know. I don't think they could have done any more besides sack him. But would sacking him been the best thing for the business to grow and for people to keep jobs and for shareholder return? They did determine that on the spot sacking him would have been detrimental to the share price for those people. So
didn't consider it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to see that company succeed, because it's a lot of jobs, a lot of growth, and good for shareholders, good for workers. For someone that's worked in the industry before and fed my children from the industry, I'm a big supporter of it. So I think unless he is literally prosecuted and put in jail, if he's not, I think he should be the one running the company, because he's the best one to do it as the founder. So we will see, but can't comment on things that haven't come out yet that may end up going that way. But based on this point, if nothing gets criminally actioned, I think he's the bloke to run it. So,
yeah, I think you described like the complexity in the whole series of events for shareholders. There are so many people that have gotten rich as a shareholder, riding the coattails of the phenomenal shareholder growth that MinRes has had over the last 2 decades, and that's not to be understated at all.
A lot of people got rich working for him too.
Totally. And, a lot of the parts of Chris, I assume, which were capable of, creating that shareholder growth, may have also been the same parts of him that led him to make some lapses in judgment along the way too. I'll tell you what, like, you're right that it all depends on, is there anything else? And I actually think there's a phrase I wanted to read out to you guys, which gives a clue on that front, right? So this is part of James McClement's statement. He goes, "It is important to note that some investigations are ongoing. The board is committed to understanding the facts and identifying where improvements can be made. We'll continue to report these matters in line with our disclosure obligations." So I kind of see that as there are some queries or lines of investigation that are yet to probably be kind of disclosed either in the media or in MinRes's own statements, that they're trying to determine, is this true or is this not true? And there's the padding there, which, leaves a lot of doubt behind me actually throwing any support behind Chris. I can't take away the phenomenal amount of value creation that MinRes has created. I actually think that their capital allocation has been very poor in the last 2 years. Personally, I think it's been pro-cyclical, and we've seen that with lithium. I think we're going to see that with the iron ore as well. And that's, big question mark over that. So I just think all of the parts of that business that, where it had been kind of, firing on all sides. I question the capital allocation. I question the ability to kind of stand by a leader of that business who kind of did the things that he did and admitted to doing. It's pretty, if either of you did that to me as a business partner, I'd fucking, I couldn't work with you again. That's how it is.
Yeah, super, super interesting. To start with, I thought it was awesome, the shareholder response. They are the owners of the business. It was great to actually hear, we've been making our own judgments and all that. So it was really good to hear what the mum and dad shareholders, we've seen what some of the institutional in the past couple of weeks actually think about the business that they own, how they reflect on what Chris Ellison has sort of done. I mean, we caught a bit of that in how some of the proxies were voted. Obviously, an important one got pulled, but on the REM report, you can see a lot of shareholders aren't happy. Anecdotally, we heard a lot of positive things from shareholders. I mean, I'm with you guys on, we can't, who knows what else is going to come out. A fair bit has sort of come out. Will remain to be seen what ASIC does. I think that's a super, super important one. But everything I saw today did not give me any reason to believe that Chris Ellison won't be running business. Like, just the way they spoke, the way Chris didn't even mention leaving. That point wasn't even touched upon. I suppose that's the way you kind of got to look at it. If from his perspective, you just keep running it until the board makes the decision that they kind of make. But they don't want to sack him, and they're looking for every reason not to sack him. And that just comes down to the shareholder returns. Capital allocation has not been good in the past few years. They've run the business for many decades and it has been pretty good. Hindsight's 2020. There was some sort of stinkers buying everything, lithium market. Iron ore remains to be kind of seen where that kind of goes. But yeah, I think this has been the story for the media, like we sort of said, and I think people are getting a little bit tired of it now.
I'm fucking over it.
Yeah, people want it to kind of be done now.
Well, why can't just ASIC and the company do everything from here? Because it's like a lot of the media stuff's all for the media's gain. It's not for fucking anyone else's, it's for their own. So why can't
everybody? I agree, but everyone only ever works for their own gain.
I don't agree with that. Was the media's investigation of Sandvik and Freda? That's a different scenario. But like, the media has a role to play, kind of calling out bad behaviour. That's how you get better governance in the long run for society.
What about every Twitter post? Who's that benefiting?
That's media. It's all media.
But it's all Twitter people just trying to get more fucking
They're
followers.
real people.
No, in my view, the Twitter thing's completely different. That's just the equivalent of people chatting down a pub online. Like, that is separate from the media that gets distributed to hundreds of thousands of people. That's just a room to chat in. That's a kind of different thing. That's how I see that one anyway.
Yeah, but it gets fucking shared everywhere, and I've had a gutful of it. I think it's the info's out there till new info comes out, then continue on. But it's just like, yeah, I just want to, with the comment that the lady said at the end, we did have a snippet of it, just like, be good to just see the business fucking start again and get past this shit. Unless, as I said, he's literally prosecuted and not in public anymore.
Mate,
I don't think we'll talk about the governance bit, but like I say, focus on the cash flow. That determines the future here.
Yeah, exactly. Focus on that.
Moving
Very
on.
good. Oh, fucking NexGen.
Love that.
Big news out of bloody NexGen. NexGen are actually one step closer towards needing a hybrid power station provided by CrossBoundary Energy. Final permitting is nearing. So that's pretty much the first call they'll be making. Tim.taylor, CrossBoundary Energy. Give me a zero capex, bloody build, own, operate, power purchase agreement for a hybrid power station to power the Rook 1 uranium project. Timmy, get your phone ready. It's a no-brainer. It probably does mean that NexGen mightn't need K-drill as much now.
It's true.
They've defined, when you get permit and everything, you've defined a resource. They've probably got enough uranium. But for the mining companies out there, if you're not comfortable with how much you've got in the ground, you just want to get a bit of the sweetener, chuck some RC and diamond holes in, courtesy of the legends at K-drill. Not just K for Kalgoorlie, could be K for Kazatomprom. Who knows?
Yes. Good
Anyway,
feet.
RC, Diamond, K-drill. So bloody two great vendors we recommend there.
Get in touch with them.
Oh, beautiful.
Go Tim.taylor, go K-drill.
The news, Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. So they've advised NexGen that the final federal technical review has been completed. So they received a shitload of actions that they had to send responses to back in October 2023, submitted the responses in May this year, and it's finally come back to say that they've all either been accepted or accepted with commitment, meaning they'll have to address these items before commencing any work activities on site, because you can't determine it yet till it's been put in. I think there's 14 of them. So an example I'll bring up here is implementing runoff management from the project airstrip and explosive storage area. So a lot of those ones are the big, because it's an environmental assessment. It's all about pretty much preserving the Patterson Lake, the fish and habitats and everything. So obviously very, very environmental, and the fact it's uranium. It raises a few flags. So so pretty much now it seems pretty administrative from this point. So they'll advance to a federal commission hearing and subsequent federal project approval decision.
Is that more of a formality, Matty?
Yeah, it sounds pretty much that. They reckon it's most likely approval gets granted once you're at this point. So I think the hearing date gets set imminently. Then I think after the commission hearing occurs, the legislator has 60 days to ratify the decision. So if all that goes to plan, it looks like potentially they could start construction around second quarter 2025 or early Q3 2025. Depending on a lot of things to happen before that, but
still pretty soon.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to also see upon this, and this might tie into the financing and everything, if we actually start seeing, once that's approved, if NexGen start entering the term market, and whether that term market is in the form of like a finance offtake for future pounds to use for the capex. So because US $1.6 billion at this stage pre-production capex. US $4.7 billion market cap for the company. So will there be a bit of offtake financing? We're going to see a big bloody equity raise, a big fuck-off debt facility, or a combination of all of the above? Or maybe will we see the likes of Cameco, Orano, or anyone try and take them or look to buy a stake in the project as a JV? It's going to be, this could be a very interesting time coming up, because, and I think you can confidently say the NexGen team that's discovered it, kudos to discovering it, but they're not the team to build it. Like, you need a friggin' for the best uranium deposit in the world outside of Jabiluka, you need someone that's been there before and done it. And whether that's like your Orano, Cameco that have done it, or someone, I think that's the logical path that this is going to take. It's not an exploration team that's going to build this. You could recruit people, but I think a historical company that's been there and done it before would be the more logical path for this to take. So it could be interesting next couple of months once this gets approved.
Yeah, seems like big news in some respect. If that whole thing, which has been everyone's focused on the permitting timelines, it's moving forward. It's like every time there's like a thing ticked off, there's another thing to wait for now, but it's moving.
And
you
look
market liked it too.
Yeah, when you look at it's interesting to see how they performed, even though uranium's gone to shit this year. You bring them up in, so I've got the S&P chart here. They're actually nearly at an all-time high, pretty much bang on an all-time high for the stock price, even with spot down where it is and the sentiment where it is. It's all pending, but they're up 33% in the year from today. So outperformed Cameco, UEC, you look at Paladin and Boss, the Aussie listed producers, they're down 19% and 26% for the same period. So those American, the American equities have really outperformed those two Australian listed ones.
Do you reckon the hedges would pairs trade long, NexGen short the restarts who have ramp-up issues?
Yeah. And NexGen's just the best asset as well. That's where the logical money goes, and it's got the big chunky market cap. So it's probably got
generalists just go there.
More bloody passive and active money going into it. But yeah, market cap is king in uranium for the ETF flows. So
do you really think the sentiment is that bad? I mean, obviously it's no lithium or nickel or anything like that. I mean,
a sentiment was the wrong word. It was more the
equity performance in Australia.
The performance in the spot price. It just hasn't kicked yet. If it's going to kick, who knows? But yes, the sentiment and the fucking hype around it is
building
huge.
Yeah,
but it hasn't been shown in the actual underlying spot price. It has in the term price, but term price has been lifting, and it's like the term price is back above the spot price, which is what it was the case for how the spot market worked, because that was just the leftover 15% shit that they couldn't sell in term, so you sell it cheaper.
Like we spoke about a week or two in the office, Matty, if you could not see the spot price at all, and not the Aussie equities either, you just read the announcements, see what has happened over the last year, I think you'd be feeling better. I don't think that the narrative has gone away. It's been building. Big tech has been getting more vocal. Tensions, Russia, US, potentially more bullish news. I think none of that's sort of gone away for the people that step back and take that longer term view.
Very much so. All good, righto. Thanks all the bloody partners, as per always. Mineral Mining, I've got to go pick the kids up. Better fucking rip through. Mineral Mining Services, Grounded, CrossBoundary Energy, Sandvik Ground Support, CRE Insurance, K-Drill, Dash Sat, Hooteroo Money Miners.
Hooteroo, guys.
Hooteroo.
The information contained in this episode of Money of Mine is of general nature only and does not take into account the objectives, financial situation or needs of any particular person. Before making any investment decision, you should consult with your financial advisor and consider how appropriate the advice is to your objectives, financial situation and needs.